Being a woman is tough. Women of Excellence with Janeé Hill encourages, equips, and empowers women with real solutions to real issues. From business to family, to health and relationships, work-life balance. If women face it, we address it with heart, humor, and a hands-on approach. Women of Excellence, where laughter meets tough love as we do life together.
Our world has drastically changed with the coronavirus. And even though some things are getting back to a new normal, life will be different. And so today I'm going to talk about how we can pivot on purpose. When you hear the word pivot, what do you think of?
Turning.
Turning, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Shifting gears.
Mm-hmm. Shifting gears, absolutely. And as I looked at the definition of pivot, Cambridge Dictionary said to change your opinions, statements, or decisions. That seems pretty basic. But how do we pivot and change our opinions, our statements, our decisions, and maybe even ultimately our lives with a purpose? I see so many people, as things are shifting, they're just reacting, probably myself included. For instance, my 5-year-old son's school changed how it was doing school, and I just had to pivot. I had to change. I didn't really have a choice in that matter. But as we are moving forward and thinking about how we can do things different to where we are more closely aligned with our purpose, there's a strategy to doing that, and that's what I'm going to share today. Now, how many of you are familiar with basketball and this move, the pivot move? Jill, you're in athletics or health and fitness, so you may know, but what is the pivot that they do in basketball? Do you know?
Well, I believe you're referring to the move where they've got their hands on the ball, one foot stays grounded, and they shift and move and look for all of their options before releasing the ball.
Yes. So the first step of really being able to pivot with purpose, and it starts with a C, but your one foot in place is your core values. Mm-hmm. And so take a minute to write that down, your core values. Before we do any pivot, any looking at options, we have to look at what our core values are. I might actually get a little choked up, but this COVID-19 for me, I am now homeschooling my 5-year-old son. We have kind of sheltered in place at my parents' lake house. We're the only ones here. It's out in the middle of nowhere. But as I am watching my son, I am realizing how much of a perfectionist he is, how hard he is on himself. But more than that, I'm realizing how I have always said that my faith and family and making a difference were my top 3 core values. But in reality, I have put work ahead of my family. And it wasn't until I stepped away from work, which I was kind of forced to do through COVID-19, that I saw that. And it really just broke my heart. And so before we look to pivot, what are your core values that you absolutely have to have? Jill, you mentioned that one of your core values now. Mm-hmm. And my question is, do we think core values ever change? Do they?
Yes, they do. Absolutely.
Why do you say that, Jill?
Because I've seen mine change. For example, you just mentioned you're recognizing in your own self that you'd put work ahead of family, but family was one of your core values. I have self-professed that my top 3 values have been friends, family, and health. Not necessarily in that order, you know. And then when I did this most recent introspection, I realized health, I have not been putting my own personal health at the top 3 of my core values, my health has actually been taken a detrimental, well, maybe not detrimental hit, but nonetheless, because I too was putting work ahead of my own health. I wasn't getting enough rest. My stress was a little bit lopsided. So I understand what you mean, and definitely values do change. And I'm ready to put my health back at the top.
Awesome. Susan, how about you when you think about kind of pivoting with your core values, and can they change?
I would have thought core values can't change. So,
Because
well, I think what we value changes, absolutely. What is most important today was not necessarily most important 4 months ago, or 4 years ago, or 12 years ago. Circumstances and seasons in life change, and sometimes that's driven by the need of what we have to get done, or what we have to do to put food on our table, or people that are important in our lives at the time, and how we need to nurture them and mentor them and serve them. But to me, the core itself, who you are, what is intrinsically important to you, is, to me, kind of part of our DNA. And we can hone that, and we can make it more important, and we can lessen it and make other things seem more important. But that's my view of it, is that at the core, how we're built, what drives us, is what drives us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that you guys kind of have two different perspectives. And really, from my perspective, there is no right or wrong. I think the important thing I have seen in my life is to be willing to stop long enough to look at what is most important to me in this season of life, and how am I going to make sure I'm living it. And I will tell you that for me, busyness is a great deceptor. And what I mean by that is, before COVID-19, I was so super busy all the time that if you had asked me if I was living according to my values, I would have said yes. Because faith is number one. I serve at my church. I'm very active in my church. So check that off the list. 2, family. Every night my family has a meal on the table. I won't comment on how good it is, but they do have a meal. And I feel like I would have said at that time that absolutely they're number one. But then if I look at making a difference, I am a business owner. So making a difference is a core value of mine. And in terms of making a difference, sometimes I had put making a difference in others' lives ahead of making a difference within my family. And so I think it's just so super important that we allow ourselves to press pause and say, what are my top values? And our top values can change, Susan, like you were saying. Our priorities change, seasons in life change. But oftentimes we become human just doing the same things, instead of really human beings, being the person that we were called to be. So I would encourage us to all look for ways that we can pivot, but keeping your core values as that thing that really you're going to let that be your strong anchor, your strong foot in the ground. So that's the first step. The second step is throw everything out the window. So if you're taking notes, out the window is a funnier way to say, be open to doing things totally differently. I am super excited. My husband and I are entertaining a new business idea. And it is not anything we've ever done before. It has nothing to do with my past gifts and skills. Nope, this is totally out of the box, because we threw everything out the window We were open to new ideas. And so allow your mind to think out of the box. Allow yourself to be open. Just because you've been an executive director in an organization for a long time, that doesn't mean you have to be. I'm not saying that for you, Susan. I don't know that Exodus Ministries would do well without you.
But I'm listening, I'm taking notes.
But really being open, so you've always been in health and fitness. Is that really what you want to be doing? Is that the best place for you? And so that second O is really to throw everything out the window and be open to new things out of the box. The third step, look for voids that you can fill. With this new business opportunity that my husband and I are considering, in the area that we're considering doing it, there is literally no one doing it. There is a void there. When I started Women of Excellence, I felt like there was a void for a supportive, collaborative community for high achieving women to learn and grow. Jill, I know that you're kind of focused in the health and wellness space. I was talking to my mom yesterday. She's not elderly by any stretch of the imagination because I'm young. Not really. But but we talked about how just this virtual life, it gives so many other resources that we wouldn't have. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people who are maybe a little bit older than we are may not be used to that virtual life. And so there is a void in that market to lean into that community and that demographic and teach them. So look for where there is a void. How can you kind of see that need and meet that need? Susan, with the work that you do at Exodus, you look at, there are women, formerly incarcerated moms, who need to reconnect with their children, but maybe they don't know how to do that. And so that is the void that Exodus Ministries meets. So what is a void that you can fill? So we talked about looking at your core values, being open to throwing things out the window and thinking out of the box, looking for voids to fill. And then the next one is an I. Look at ways to make income and or impact. I say income because I have worked with a lot of women who have great ideas. It's related to their core values. It's definitely filling a void, but they haven't thought about ways to make an income and or an impact. And so therefore it's hard for the idea to sustain. And if you don't know how to monetize what you're doing, even if it's a nonprofit, I mean, I'm happy to help because that is my wheelhouse, is how do we figure out how to really sustain this business? So look at ways to make an income or an impact. And then lastly, just do it. How many times, I mean, it's basic, I get it. But how many times have we maybe paused on something or not moved forward? Maybe even someone on this call has done that. Because we let analysis paralysis set in. We either get afraid of what we don't know or we start overthinking it instead of just doing something. Mm-hmm. With this new business idea that my husband and I are considering, we haven't started anything. Sometimes the first move people make is to get a website. Well, what we are doing right now is just some research. What would it cost? What do we think we could make off of it? But we're at least doing something to move that idea forward. So we talked about 5 steps to pivot with purpose. And if you notice, we've got core values, out of the box, look for voids, income or impact, and then do it. That's COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I knew where you were going with that once we got to the I. Very clever.
But I think for many of us, we have looked at how COVID-19 has changed our lives. Certainly, Susan, with the women you serve, maybe not you as much personally. But for many of us, Jill, you mentioned that we are all on a level playing field now. It has given us the opportunity to have a blank slate. And so what will we do with it? So as I was kind of talking through this and sharing, what questions, comments, thoughts, or feelings do you all have?
I've been noticing some of the, with all of the coverage that I've been seeing on the news, it's taken a toll on the country, and it's really illuminated the points in humanity that need help. The food, the household items, the shelter at home for the elderly, the people that are really already shut-ins. So what it's done for me as part of the do it and seeing the voids, I think I've seen some of the voids out there, and I'm trying to align, or I'm not trying, I'm feeling the resonance within me that do relate back to my long list of values as to how I might pivot. In a sense, I love food, the garden, being outside, and the older folks, the active agers, but particularly the elderly. And so I'm seeing that there's a need out there, and how may I, with my background, help, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Susan, how about for you?
Just the need to connect with people. I'm seeing that so many people feel disconnected, and feel, instead of, for me, just like both of you, I've thoroughly enjoyed my time at home. I'm thrilled, honestly, personally, that somebody stopped the hamster wheel and let me get off for a minute. And so I'm excited about the possibility, really nationwide, if everybody would grab hold of it, of not getting back on the same hamster wheel. Everybody has talked for the first several weeks of returning to our returning back to normal, And I think there's been a shift. I'm seeing it. I'm hearing it, that maybe we don't want to get back to that normal, and I think that's a beautiful takeaway for what's going on. And I hope more people grab hold of it, that there seems to be, at least in my little circle where I am, and just the world that my community, not just Exodus, but just the people that I'm in touch with. There's compassion, there's more kindness, there's definitely an appreciation for those teachers. Hopefully they'll get a pay raise, and hopefully their teacher appreciation gifts will be huge this year. There's even a new appreciation for homeschooling families, and having homeschooled both of our children from kindergarten through graduation. I appreciate the love. People are saying, "Oh my goodness, maybe we shouldn't look down our nose. Maybe we shouldn't say, what kind of wackadoos do?" I get it. There's a bunch of wackadoos, and there are days that any homeschooling mother would tell you, "What am I even thinking?" But there's an appreciation for that. There's an appreciation for our medical workers, and our first responders. There's an appreciation for those that have not had the chance and will not get the chance to get off the hamster wheel, because they are truly essential and needed and necessary. And yet there's an overall compassion toward them, and a kindness and an appreciation. I think more people are getting outside and enjoying the sunshine. You see more people jogging and walking and biking and just standing in their front yards, because Lord knows they just need to see some sunshine and not the same faces and the same walls. But families are getting creative. Families are playing games together, which, since technology hit, has not really been a priority for a lot of families. Families are eating dinner together. What a concept. Things that we did years ago that were part of the core values that a lot of us were raised on. But life goes so quickly, and there's so many activities, and there's so many distractions that that they've been put away and put on the wayside. But I think what we're going to find is that a lot of people, there's some parts of this new normal, these masks and this lack of toilet paper. I mean, we can do without that, right? The 6 feet and these shields that are up on the cashiers that make them not so personable. Not them, but you just kind of, for people like me that like to see eyeballs, I'm like, I need to see like you, not plastic you. But so some of it we can do away with. But I hope, and my prayer is that some of it we hang on to and we don't go back to our old normal.
And it reminds me of when I would go to camp in the summer growing up, and whether it was a church camp or a little athletic camp, and it would be such a great experience. And I would come back and go, I'm going to do X differently. And that lasted for maybe a week. Mm-hmm. And then before I knew it, I went back to my old ways. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm going to encourage us to write down just one thing, one lesson we are going to take away from COVID-19, one thing we're going to do differently. Mm-hmm. And so that is part of your homework. But I want to close with this. This was so interesting when I was researching what it means to pivot and how to pivot and all those things. I found a couple of definitions that when pivot is used as a noun, it says a person, thing, or factor that has a major or crucial role. So let me say that one more time. A pivot is a person, a thing, or a factor that has a major or crucial role. And so for me, it goes back to what is the pivot in my life? And then how can I maybe be that pivot to someone else? If we don't know where we're going, any road will get us there. And so what is one pivot that you can make that's going to help you get closer to the life that you want and what you were created to do?
Do you have a place where you can go and be yourself, gain insight, support others, be challenged, and leave feeling better than when you came? To see if Women of Excellence is a good fit for you, email me at info@janeehill.com. Women of Excellence, where laughter meets tough love as we do life together.